My name is Leah Foster, and I'm 28 years old. If you'd seen me a year ago, you probably would have thought I was one of those people who had her life quietly under control. I was the woman in the steel-toe boots and faded jeans, laptop bag slung over one shoulder, coffee in hand, badge clipped to my belt as I walked into a manufacturing plant before sunrise. I'm a software developer for a manufacturing company. I write the code that runs assembly lines and monitors machines. If I screw up, real metal breaks, real production stops. It's not glamorous, but it's precise, and it's mine. One bug in the wrong place, and people can get hurt. That kind of responsibility gets into your bones. 6 months ago, I was lying on a hospital stairwell, landing, barely able to breathe, staring up at a blurry ceiling while my parents hovered over my younger sister, comforting her like she was the one who'd almost died. All because of a condo. But we'll get there. Let me rewind because you need to understand how you get from slightly spoiled little sister to woman who shoves her big sister down a staircase in a hospital. I grew up in a house where there were 3 children, but only one star in the sky. My younger sister Claire, 26, perfectly blow-dried, Instagram-ready Claire, has been the center of our family's universe since she figured out that tears were currency. She weaponized them around age 4. From then on, the rules were simple. Claire cried, and the world rearranged itself to accommodate her. When we were kids, she'd break my stuff and blame me. My parents would ground me for not taking better care of my things. She'd steal money from Mom's purse, and somehow I'd end up being lectured for leaving my backpack in the hallway where Claire could accidentally get confused and grab the wrong wallet. By high school, the pattern was set in concrete. Claire failed her driver's test 3 times because she couldn't be bothered to put her phone away. Did our parents make her practice more? Did they say, no phone in the car until you pass? Of course not. They kept paying for retests and then, eventually, bought her a car anyway. I, on the other hand, saved tips from my part-time job at the hardware store and bought a beat-up Honda Civic that rattled when it hit 40 miles per hour. I remember the day I pulled into our driveway with that car. I was proud. My parents were mildly impressed. Claire was irritated there was no matching car waiting for her. College was the same movie on repeat. Claire went to State University on Mom and Dad's dime, changed majors 4 times, and took 6 years to graduate with a communications degree she has never used for a single serious job. I got a partial academic scholarship to a decent engineering program, worked 20 hours a week to cover the rest, and graduated in 4 years with honors. My parents' response to my graduation was a generic card with $50 and a scribbled, "We're proud of you," inside. 6 months later, when Claire finally walked across a different stage with her degree, they threw her a full party at an expensive restaurant. Balloons, cake, a slideshow, the works. Dad gave a long, emotional speech about how proud he was that she never gave up despite all the challenges. The challenges being that she occasionally had to show up to class. I moved out right after college, got my job, and within 3 years, scraped together enough to buy a small 1-bedroom apartment. Not fancy, but it was mine, my code, my rent, my life. Claire moved back home after graduation and set up shop in my parents' basement, like a permanent guest who never checks out. She picked up random social media consultant gigs that paid about as much as a teenager's weekend job and spent the rest of her time scrolling on her phone, calling it networking. Enter Uncle Raymond. Uncle Raymond is Dad's older brother and the only adult in my life who ever looked at me and saw a whole person instead of a supporting character in the Claire show. While my parents were busy rearranging the universe around their golden child, Uncle Raymond was the one who taught me how to change my oil, fix a leaky faucet, negotiate a salary. Every Sunday for years, I'd drive over to his place. He had this workshop in his garage with every tool you could imagine, neatly stored, labeled, loved. He'd let me use whatever I needed for little projects for my place and treat my time and my effort like they mattered. He was a retired engineer who'd spent 35 years at an aerospace company, never married, never had kids. He had a paid-off condo in a good part of town, 3 bedrooms, solid building, probably worth around $450,000. He had routines, his woodworking projects, his coffee at the same local cafe every morning, trivia nights he never missed. He was also the first person to say out loud, "Leah, what your parents are doing. That favoritism, it's not normal. You're not crazy." When I got my engineering degree, he took me out to dinner, just us. At the end, he slid a nice leather portfolio across the table, my initials embossed on the corner. "You earned this," he said. "Not because someone handed you opportunities, but because you worked for them. That's worth more than anything they'll ever give your sister." The first time I cried about my parents, I didn't cry in my childhood bedroom. I cried in Uncle Raymond's kitchen, next to the sink, clutching a mug of his good coffee. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just handed me a napkin and said, "You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, not even family." When his hip started acting up last year, I was the one who drove him to appointments, researched surgeons, stayed overnight after the worst days. Claire showed up once, complained about parking for 15 minutes, then left. About 3 months before the stairwell, Uncle Raymond called me over for an important conversation. We sat in his living room, my laptop off for once, both of us cradling mugs of that same good coffee. "I'm updating my will," he said, matter of fact, like he was telling me he'd changed his phone plan. "I'm leaving the condo to you." The room seemed to tilt for a second. "Uncle Raymond, that's huge. I don't know if I can." "You can," he cut me off. "You're the one who shows up. You're the one who cares. You're going to need a bigger place if you keep working remote. This condo has 3 bedrooms. One for sleeping, one for that fancy home office you won't shut up about, one for guests. It makes sense." "What about Claire?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Old conditioning, old guilt. "What about her?" he asked. "When's the last time she visited me without your parents dragging her here? When's the last time she called just to check in?" He was right. In the last decade, I could count her visits on one hand. Each one was attached to a holiday. "I'm not leaving her nothing," he added. "There's cash set aside for her and your parents. But the condo goes to you. You'll appreciate it. They'll just see dollar signs." I thanked him. Even though the words felt small against the size of what he was giving me, it didn't feel like a prize. It felt like he was trying to build me a lifeboat in advance, just in case. The mistake came later. Mom insisted on a family dinner to celebrate that Uncle Raymond's hip replacement consultation had gone well. Surgery was booked for the next month. She wanted everyone together before things got serious. I showed up with the good bread from his favorite bakery. Claire showed up 45 minutes late with nothing and immediately started complaining about traffic and how this side of town sucks. Dinner was the usual performance. Mom and Dad hung on Claire's every word as she described her latest campaign for some boutique's Instagram page. When I mentioned that my company had just landed a major contract and I'd been chosen to lead the dev team, Dad glanced at me and said, "That's nice, sweetheart. Pass the potatoes." I felt the familiar little slice behind my ribs, the old wound. Then Uncle Raymond, bless his blunt, tired heart, decided he was done with the script. "I updated my will last week," he said casually over dessert. "I wanted you all to know. Leah's getting the condo when I'm gone." The whole table froze. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Dad's jaw clenched, even though he tried to keep a neutral smile. Claire's expression shifted. The fake pleasantness slipped, and something colder slid in underneath. "The condo?" Mom repeated. "Raymond, that place is worth nearly $500,000. "I'm aware of what my own property is worth," he said. "But Claire's your niece, too," Dad said carefully. "Shouldn't it be split between them?" "No," Uncle Raymond replied, clean and decisive. "Leah's earned it. She's the one who's been here, helping out, actually giving a damn. Claire's welcome to visit more if she wants to change my mind, but I doubt that'll happen." Claire's smile turned venomous as she looked at me. "Wow, Leah, way to manipulate an old man." "I didn't manipulate anyone," I shot back, heat rising in my face. "I visit because I care about him, not because I'm waiting for him to die." "Everyone knows what you're doing," she hissed. "Playing the good niece, making the rest of us look bad so you can swoop in and take what should be mine." "Claire, that's enough," Uncle Raymond snapped. "Nobody's making you look bad except you. It's my decision. It's final." Dinner disintegrated after that. Mom barely spoke to me, just kept giving me these wounded, disappointed looks like I'd stolen something from her. Dad cycled through speeches about family unity and not letting money divide us, while doing nothing to address the actual issue. Claire stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I helped Uncle Raymond into my car afterward. He was quiet until we were halfway to his place. "I shouldn't have announced it like that," he said finally, "but I'm tired of tiptoeing around their favoritism. They needed to hear it." "It's your condo," I said. "You can leave it to whoever you want." "That's exactly right," he answered, "and I'm leaving it to the person who deserves it." That should have been the end of the drama. But Claire isn't the kind of person who hears no and moves on. She's the kind of person who hears no and starts looking for stairs. If the story had any sense of mercy, that dinner would have been the worst of it. We all would have gone home, sulked for a few weeks, and then learned to coexist with this new reality. But my sister doesn't coexist with things she can't control. She smashes them into a shape that benefits her, or she tries to destroy them. It started small. A week after the will announcement, I went over to my parents' house for our usual Sunday lunch. I almost didn't go. My stomach was in knots just parking in front of the house, but Uncle Raymond had told me not to give them the satisfaction of pushing me out of the family entirely, so I went. Lunch was strained. Mom kept forcing small talk. Dad stayed buried in the sports section, and Claire scrolled on her phone at the table, pretending I was invisible unless she was making some passive-aggressive comment. As I was leaving, I stepped into the entryway to grab my keys from the hook by the door. Claire was behind me, chattering to Mom about some brand collaboration she was convinced would blow up her follower count. I had my hand on the doorframe, leaning forward to pull my shoes on when it happened. The door slammed, hard. Pain exploded through my knuckles as the edge of the heavy wooden door caught my hand against the frame. I yanked back instinctively, biting down on a swear. "Oh my God, Leah, I'm so sorry." Claire's voice went up 3 notches, syrupy with concern. "I didn't see your hand there." My hand was already swelling, skin scraped and starting to bruise. I cradled it against my chest, trying to breathe through the spike of pain. Mom rushed over, not to me, but to Claire. "It's okay, honey," she soothed, putting a hand on my sister's shoulder. "Accidents happen. Don't feel bad." "Maybe don't stand that close to the door next time," Dad added to me, frowning. "You know it swings fast." I stared at them, stunned. My hand throbbed. Claire's eyes met mine over Mom's shoulder. There was no guilt there, no worry, just a flash of something like satisfaction. I went home, wrapped my hand, took some ibuprofen, and told myself I was being paranoid. Doors slam. People misjudge distances. It happens. Then it happened again. 2 weeks later, some family holiday rolled around that my parents insisted we couldn't skip just because of some tension. I caved and went over for dessert, intending to stay an hour and then disappear. By the time I left, the sun was down and the driveway was dark. Claire and I walked out at the same time, each headed to our cars. I remember thinking, just get to your car. Don't talk to her. Don't give her anything to twist. 1 second I was walking, the next my foot caught on something and I was airborne. I hit the concrete hard, palms scraping raw across the rough surface, my knees slamming into the ground with a sickening crack. Pain shot up my leg. I gasped, trying to suck in air. Behind me, Claire's voice floated over, all innocence. "Wow, Leah, you really need to watch where you're going," she said sweetly. "These driveways can be dangerous." I rolled onto my side and saw her standing there, her foot pulled back just a half step from where my ankle had been. She hadn't even bothered to look surprised. Mom came hurrying out the front door, Dad behind her. "What happened?" Mom asked, looking past me to Claire. "Leah tripped," Claire said quickly, a little breathless laugh at the edges of her words. "It was so scary. She just went flying." My palms burned, blood already oozing from the torn skin. My knee felt like it was swelling by the second. "You've got to be more careful," Dad said to me, shaking his head. "You know your coordination isn't the best, Leah." "Are you okay?" Mom asked Claire, touching her arm, like she'd been the one who hit the ground. I stared at them from the concrete and understood something I hadn't fully admitted to myself before. They didn't just miss what Claire was doing. They refused to see it. I drove home with a throbbing knee and bandaged palms, the steering wheel slick under my fingers. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from my boyfriend, Ethan. "How's family dinner? You okay?" I stared at the screen for a long second before typing. "I'll tell you later. It's a lot." I didn't send pictures of my hands. I didn't tell him about the look on Claire's face. Some part of me still felt stupid, like I was overreacting, like maybe it really was just bad luck. Until the coffee. A week before Uncle Raymond's scheduled hip replacement, I was back at my parents' house, helping Dad fix the back door that never quite closed right. I was kneeling by the hinges, screwdriver in hand, focusing on the screws. Claire drifted into the kitchen, cup of coffee in hand, mug clasped in both fingers. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. "Hey, can you move?" she said, already walking toward me. Before I could respond, she tripped. The mug tipped. Scalding hot coffee cascaded down my forearm. I screamed. I couldn't help it. It felt like my skin was being peeled off. I dropped the screwdriver, stumbling back, gripping my arm. Blisters rose almost instantly, angry and red. "Oh my God," Claire said again too quickly. "I didn't see you there. You should have moved." Dad looked up from the doorframe, frowning, not at her, but at me. "You okay?" he asked, like I'd bumped my shin, not had boiling liquid poured onto my skin. "It's fine," Mom said briskly, wetting a dish towel and pressing it directly onto the burn. I yanked my arm back with another involuntary cry. "Leah, stop making such a big deal out of it," she scolded. "You've always been so sensitive." Sensitive. I drove myself to urgent care with my arm wrapped in a towel, the pain radiating up into my shoulder. "Second-degree burns," the doctor said, moving gently as he dressed the wound properly. "How did this happen again?" he asked. "My sister spilled coffee," I answered, and the words caught in my throat. Even to my own ears, it sounded flimsy. Later, in Uncle Raymond's living room, I rolled up my sleeve and showed him the bandages. His face went still. "Coffee accident?" he guessed. His voice was quiet, but there was an edge in it. "Yeah," I said. "She tripped." I told him about the door, the driveway, the way my parents had responded each time. He listened without interrupting, jaw tightening with every incident. "She's testing boundaries," he said finally, "seeing how far she can go before anybody stops her." "They're never going to stop her," I said. It came out sharper than I intended. "They're too busy protecting her feelings." "Then you need to stop giving them chances to hurt you," he replied. "Limit how often you see them. And when you do, keep someone with you who isn't impressed by her performances." He paused, eyes softening. "Leah, people who gets away with small violence often graduate to bigger violence," he added. "I need you to take this seriously. Be careful around her." The word violence sat heavy between us. I didn't want to pick it up, but it was already lodged in my chest. "I will," I promised. "I'll be careful." Uncle Raymond's hip replacement surgery went well. I was at Riverside Medical Center when they took him in and waiting when they wheeled him back out, groggy but alive and irritated at the hospital food. Claire didn't show up until 2 days later, and even then only because Mom apparently guilted her into it. She spent more time complaining about the parking garage than asking how he felt. 4 days after the surgery, he was doing well enough that the doctors started talking about discharge. The plan was for him to spend a few weeks at a rehabilitation facility, and then I'd move into his spare bedroom to help him through the last part of recovery. My boss had already signed off on me working fully remote for a month. "As long as the code ships and the line stays up, I don't care if you're in an office or on Mars," he'd joked. That Thursday afternoon, I stopped by the hospital after work with a bag from the cafe downstairs. Real coffee, not the burnt dirt they served on the ward, and a couple of crossword puzzle books he'd mentioned wanting. I stepped into his room and smiled. "Brought contraband," I said, holding up the bag. "You're my favorite niece," he declared immediately, reaching for the coffee. "Don't tell the others." "Oh, wait, there are no others." We were laughing when Claire walked in. She looked irritated, like being there was a chore she'd been forced into. "Oh, good," she said, dropping into a chair without greeting either of us. "Leah's here, playing favorite niece again." "Claire," Uncle Raymond said tiredly, "if you're just here to start something, you can leave." "I'm here to visit my uncle who just had surgery," she replied, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Is that not allowed?" The air in the room tightened. For 20 minutes, she kept up this passive-aggressive commentary about how I was always around, how Uncle Raymond was obviously playing favorites, how inheritance drama was such a cliché. I watched his energy drain with each sentence. His hip might have been healing, but the emotional strain was its own kind of injury. Finally, I stood. "I'm going to head out," I said gently to Uncle Raymond. "Let you rest. I'll be back tomorrow." "Thanks for the coffee and the puzzles, kid," he said. "You're good people." I squeezed his hand, then slung my bag over my shoulder and moved toward the door. Claire stood up at the same time. "I should get going too," she announced. Then, with a bright, artificial smile, "Walk you out, Leah." Every instinct in my body went rigid. "No," something in me whispered, "don't be alone with her." But we were in a hospital, nurses everywhere. Cameras, security, doctors. What could she really do here? "Sure," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. We walked down the hallway in silence, our footsteps echoing against white walls. The elevator bay was crowded, families, staff, some guy maneuvering a wheelchair. Claire glanced at the lit-up numbers, then at the closed stairwell door beside them. "Elevators are going to take forever," she said casually. "Let's take the stairs. It's only 2 floors down to the parking garage." I hesitated, hand hovering between the elevator button and the stairwell handle. "You scared of a little cardio?" she asked, a teasing lilt in her voice. Come on, it's faster. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Uncle Raymond was right, but that also this was a public building. There were cameras, people, witnesses. I pushed open the stairwell door and stepped inside. I should have trusted my gut. The stairwell was colder than the hallway. Concrete walls, metal railings, dim lighting that hummed faintly overhead. Our footsteps echoed with each step, hollow and rhythmic. I kept my hand on the railing, partly because the stairs were steep, partly because something inside me felt off. We walked in silence for a moment, then Claire spoke. You know this is all your fault, right? I turned my head slightly. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Leah. Her voice bounced off the walls, sharper than the stairwell acoustics could account for. Uncle Raymond's will, him giving you the condo. You manipulated him. I stopped mid-step, turning enough to look at her directly. Her face was composed, almost bored. I didn't manipulate anyone, Claire, I said. I help him because I care about him. You'd know what that looks like if you ever tried. Her expression didn't waver, but her grip on the railing tightened. You turned him against me, she snapped. You made me look bad so you could steal my inheritance. It was never your inheritance, I replied. It's his property. He can leave it to whoever he wants. That was the moment everything changed. Her face shifted, slightly, but enough. The fake sweetness evaporated, leaving behind something cold, calculating, and terrifyingly certain. Everything's always about you, isn't it? She said quietly. Leah, the perfect daughter. Leah, the responsible one. Leah, who does everything right. You think you deserve everything. I opened my mouth to say her name, maybe to calm her down, maybe to warn her, maybe to plead with her. I'll never know. I didn't get to finish the first syllable. Her hand slammed into my shoulders. Hard. The world flipped sideways. My stomach lurched. My hands clawed at air, reaching for the railing, the wall, anything. Gravity yanked me backward. Pain exploded across my hip as it smashed into the metal railing. Then my head clipped the edge of a concrete step, sending stars bursting across my vision. I tumbled, shoulder, back, elbow, knee, every part of my body hitting something sharp or unyielding. The landing rushed up to meet me, and I slammed onto it in a heap of limbs and agony. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The ceiling swirled above me. Blood filled my mouth with a metallic taste. Pain radiated outward like waves breaking across every inch of me. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard her. Claire's voice, transformed in an instant. No longer cold, now panicked, trembling. A perfect performance. Help! Someone help! She screamed. She fell. Mom! Dad! Leah fell down the stairs. What? Mom and Dad? Why were they? I tried to push myself up, but my body refused. Every nerve screamed in protest. My vision blurred. Footsteps thundered down from the next landing. My parents' voices were frantic, but not in the way I expected. Instead of running to me, instead of checking if I was alive, they swarmed around Claire. Oh, honey, are you all right? Mom said, her voice breaking with concern for her. That must have been terrifying to watch, Dad added, pulling Claire into his side. Claire sobbed, her act flawless. She just fell. I tried to grab her, but I couldn't reach her. I managed a groan, barely audible. She pushed. Dad knelt beside me finally, but not with worry in his eyes. Irritation. Leah, what were you thinking? He snapped. Running on the stairs like that. I wasn't, I whispered. My throat felt scraped raw. Don't blame your sister, Mom interrupted sharply from above. We saw the whole thing. You lost your balance. They saw? They were here? My pulse hammered in my ears. My head swam. None of it made sense. Why were they already on the landing above us? Why hadn't they shouted when I fell? But then, through my haze, I caught it. Claire's face. Beneath the tears, beneath the trembling lip, was a tiny, triumphant smirk. She knew they would protect her. She'd counted on it. I tried to speak again, but my chest seized with pain. My shoulder throbbed. My head pounded. Black spots flickered across my vision. Then a voice cut through the chaos. Firm, sharp, controlled. What happened here? A nurse stood at the top of the stairs, wearing navy scrubs, eyes narrowed, assessing the scene. In an instant, she scanned me on the ground, looked at Claire's tear-streaked face, then at my parents hovering protectively around her. Before anyone could answer, another hospital staff member hurried down the stairs, holding a tablet. Debbie, she said to the nurse, breathless, you need to see this, now. The nurse took the tablet. Her eyes widened as she watched something on the screen. Then her jaw tightened. Her entire posture changed, straightened, sharpened. She looked at my parents first. Mr. and Mrs. Foster, she said coldly, I'm going to need you to step away from your daughter. Mom blinked. Our daughter? What are you? Our other daughter just fell. The nurse cut her off. She didn't fall. Silence slammed into the stairwell. She was pushed, the nurse continued, her voice like steel. And we have it on camera. All color drained from Claire's face. What? Dad sputtered. That camera doesn't show anything. You're making assumptions. The staff member with the tablet stepped forward. The footage is very clear, she said. It shows this young woman, she pointed at Claire, shoving her sister down the stairs. There is no ambiguity. Claire's tears stopped instantly. That's ridiculous, she snapped. You can't prove. Maybe the angle is wrong. Maybe the lighting. The footage is crystal clear, the nurse repeated flatly. Security and police are on their way. And you, she pointed directly at Claire, need to stay exactly where you are. It was over. Right there in that stairwell, her act shattered. And what came out wasn't fear. It was fury. This is all your fault, she screamed at me, her voice echoing violently around the concrete. You ruined everything. That condo should have been mine. Uncle Raymond should have left it to me. Claire, stop talking, Dad hissed. She didn't. I'm sick of you, she shrieked. Everyone acting like you're so perfect, like you deserve everything. Well, guess what? You don't. The nurse was already calling on her phone. More staff arrived. 2 security guards appeared at the doorway. Police were being notified. Meanwhile, I lay on the landing, my body screaming, my vision fading in and out. A pair of nurses knelt beside me, one checking my pulse, the other stabilizing my neck. Ma'am, can you tell me where it hurts? One asked. Everywhere, I whispered. Hip, head, shoulder. We're going to get you to the ER, she said gently. Try not to move. As they loaded me onto a stretcher, I heard security step forward. Officer, this is our suspect, a nurse said. Suspect? Claire gasped. I didn't do anything. She fell. Tell them, Mom. Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just stood there, pale and trembling. Dad, too, was silent now, because the camera hadn't lied, and their lies no longer worked in the presence of evidence. I was wheeled out of the stairwell as the echo of Claire's screams chased me down the hall. You can't arrest me. You can't. It was her fault. Tell them, Mom. Tell them. But for the first time in my life, no one was listening to her, and no one believed her. The ER lights were too bright, sharp white beams that made the pounding inside my skull even worse. Nurses moved around me in practiced efficiency, taking vitals, cutting away part of my sleeve, checking for fractures, coordinating scans. Everything felt distant, like I was underwater watching people swim above me. By the time they wheeled me into a CT room, my thoughts were drifting in and out. Pain, exhaustion, disbelief, all swirling together. Claire pushed me. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. She shoved me down a concrete stairwell, and my parents watched. When they'd finally finished scans, fractured rib, sprained wrist, deep bruising, mild concussion, but miraculously nothing life-threatening, they rolled me into a quiet room in the ER wing. I had barely settled into the pillow when a new nurse entered. She was softer than the first one, with a calm voice that cut through the fog. How are you feeling? She asked gently. Like I fell down a flight of stairs, I muttered. That earned a small smile. Well, the police will want to speak with you when you're ready, and a detective has already been briefed. Claire, I swallowed. Even saying her name hurt. Is she? In custody, the nurse said, her tone careful. I can't discuss details of an ongoing investigation, but let's just say the footage we saw is clear. A wave of something washed over me. Relief? Grief? I couldn't tell. Maybe both. She squeezed my hand lightly. Rest. The detective will be here soon. After she left, the room felt too quiet. Ethan texted twice while I lay there. I couldn't bring myself to unlock my phone long enough to respond. What would I even say? Hey, just FYI, my sister tried to murder me in a stairwell. Dinner plans still on? It felt surreal. When the door finally opened again, a tall woman in a charcoal blazer stepped inside. Her badge glinted faintly at her hip. Ms. Foster, she said, pulling up a chair. I'm Detective Patricia Wells. I'd like to ask you a few questions if you're feeling up to it. Her voice was steady, no nonsense, grounded. Something like Uncle Raymond's tone when he talked about taxes or fixing water pressure. I nodded, even though it hurt. She flipped open a notebook. I've reviewed the security footage from the stairwell, she began. It is, frankly, an unusually clear-cut case, but I need to understand the context. She met my eyes. Has your sister been violent with you before? My breath hitched. I could have lied, could have softened it, could have pretended this was a sudden explosion, not a build-up. But the image of Claire smirking while I lay broken on the landing replayed in my mind. Yes, I said quietly, multiple times, over the last 2 months. Detective Wells paused mid-note. Can you elaborate? And I did. I told her everything. The door incident, the driveway, the coffee burn. How each time Claire played innocent while my parents comforted her. How they dismissed every injury, every bruise, every scream of pain. How often were your parents present during these incidents, Vishfa? She asked. All of them, I whispered. She didn't react outwardly, but her pen moved faster. And each time they accepted Claire's explanation? Yes. She set her pen down. The security footage shows your parents were already positioned upstairs before the push happened, she said carefully. We're investigating whether they had knowledge of your sister's intentions. Ice trickled through my veins. You think they knew? My voice cracked. I think, she said slowly. It's suspicious. And we're pulling their phone records to see if there was communication prior to the incident. My stomach twisted. The world tilted again, not from the concussion this time. My parents. They had been there, not by accident. Before I could process that, my phone buzzed, still in my pocket beneath the hospital gown. I flinched at the vibration. May I? Detective Wells asked. I nodded. She pulled it out carefully and glanced at the screen. A video message, she said, from an unknown number. She held the phone so I could see. The sender's name was just unknown. The preview image was a hospital hallway. My hands trembled. Open it, I whispered. She tapped the screen. A video filled the display, grainy but audible. It was a recording from a hospital security camera, time-stamped about an hour before Claire pushed me. Claire stood in an alcove near a vending machine, back partially turned. She lifted her phone to her ear. The hospital cameras had audio. Detective Wells turned up the volume slightly. Claire's voice came through, calm, composed, chilling. I'm telling you, once Leah's out of the picture, the condo's mine. Uncle Raymond can't change his will if his favorite niece is in the hospital with serious injuries. Or better, if she's not around at all to contest anything. My breath caught. Detective Wells leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The recording continued. One more accident should do it. Mom and Dad will back me up like always. They'll say she's clumsy, say it was inevitable. Then the condo's mine, just like it should have been. The video ended abruptly. The room felt colder somehow. Detective Wells locked the screen and stood. Where did you get this? She asked. I don't know, I whispered. Someone just sent it. We'll get digital forensics on this, she said, already dialing a number. This proves premeditation, and it implicates your parents. She stepped outside to make the call, leaving me alone with the pieces of my shattered reality. My sister tried to kill me. My parents were ready to help her lie about it. And somewhere in the hospital, someone had decided I deserved to know the truth. The door swung open again, a much slower, more careful movement, and Uncle Raymond appeared in the doorway, gripping his walker with both hands. He still wore his hospital gown. His jaw was clenched, his hair slightly messy from the exertion of walking. Uncle Raymond, I gasped, you shouldn't be. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do, he cut in, breathless but fierce. A nurse told me you were down here. I heard what happened. He made his way to the chair beside my bed and lowered himself down with a wince. My parents, I started. Your parents, he said, voice razor sharp, just tried to visit me. Tried to convince me that this was a misunderstanding. Tried to say the camera caught things at a bad angle. He shook his head. His eyes were bright with fury. I told them to get the hell out of my room, he said. And I told them exactly what I think of parents who enable one child to assault another. The tightness in my chest returned, but now it wasn't pain. It was grief. They're still my parents, I whispered. The words tasted hollow. He looked at me, softened, then shook his head. Parents protect their children, he said quietly. They don't watch one try to kill the other. He reached into his gown pocket, pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me. It was an email draft addressed to his attorney. Subject: urgent. Will update required. Immediately. Body: remove all beneficiaries except Leah. Assign Claire $1. Assign Mr. and Mrs. Foster nothing. Proceed with full restructuring as discussed. I stared at the screen. Uncle Raymond, you don't need to. Yes, he said firmly, I do. He held my gaze. I'm making sure you're protected in every way possible. He didn't mean the condo. He meant from them. Before either of us could speak again, raised voices echoed from the hallway outside my room. The sound of someone crying, someone protesting, officers giving instructions. Uncle Raymond exhaled slowly. Sounds like they're arresting your sister, he said. And for the first time that day, I felt something close to safety. But safety has a cost, and mine was just beginning to be tallied. Morning sunlight streamed through the narrow ER window, far too warm and peaceful for the news Detective Wells brought with her when she returned. She carried a folder in her hand, thick, official, heavy with implications. Her expression was steady, but her eyes held something new. Finality. "Ms. Foster," she said, pulling up the same chair from yesterday, "we have the phone records." My heart stumbled in my chest. She set the folder on the tray table beside me and opened it to a printed timeline. 12:47 p.m. Claire called your mother. Duration: 3 minutes, 42 seconds. 1:15 p.m. Claire called your father. Duration: 2 minutes, 18 seconds. 1:58 p.m. Your parents' phones pinged at Riverside Medical Center's parking garage. 2:23 p.m. Security footage shows your parents entering the hospital. 2:31 p.m. They positioned themselves on the stairwell landing above you. 2:39 p.m. Claire shoved you down the stairs. 2:40 p.m. Your parents rushed to comfort Claire. My vision swam not from injury this time, but from heartbreak. They knew? I whispered. They coordinated, Detective Wells corrected. We're charging them as accessories. Their presence, their behavior, and Claire's call logs strongly indicate they anticipated the incident and intended to support Claire's version of events. I stared at the printed timeline as if reading a foreign language. My parents weren't just negligent. They weren't just biased. They actively chose to participate, however indirectly, in something that could have ended my life. Detective Wells continued gently but firmly. They've been taken into custody. I closed my eyes. Tears slipped out, quiet, small. Not because I wanted to cry, but because something fundamental inside me had been severed. A bond I'd spent my whole life trying to strengthen had snapped cleanly in half. The news breaks. By the next morning, the story hit local headlines. Woman arrested for shoving sister down hospital stairwell. Security footage confirms. Parents accused as accessories in alleged inheritance-motivated attack. My phone buzzed so much the battery died, even though I hadn't touched it. Coworkers, classmates, distant relatives, they all reached out with shock, sympathy, confusion. Ethan sent 10 messages, then a voicemail, then finally, "I'm coming to the hospital. I'm not leaving until I see you." But I couldn't face him yet. I couldn't face anyone except the one person who never needed anything from me. Uncle Raymond. He came back late morning, assisted by a nurse and his walker. He looked tired, deep in his bones tired, but determined. "I can't believe they did this," I whispered when we were alone. "I can," he said quietly. "I've been watching their dynamic with Claire for years. I just never thought it would escalate like this." He paused. "But that's not your burden anymore, Leah. You survived. You're safe. And they're finally being held accountable." His voice didn't shake. Mine did. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now," I admitted. "Relieved? Angry? Empty?" "Feel nothing," he said softly. "You've earned the right to rest." The preliminary hearing. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom with a brace around my left wrist and a healing bruise still yellowing on my cheekbone. Uncle Raymond sat beside me, a steady anchor. Claire entered wearing the beige jumpsuit of the county detention center. Her eyes locked onto mine instantly, full of hatred, but also something new. Fear. Her attorney whispered to her as she sat, but she barely listened. Her gaze didn't break from me. When the judge called for evidence, the prosecutor approached with a screen. They played the stairwell footage first. The courtroom fell silent as Claire shoved me, as my body tumbled, as she transitioned into fake panic in a heartbeat. Someone behind me gasped aloud. Then they played the second video, the audio recording of Claire on the phone. One more accident should do it. Mom and Dad will back me up, once Leah's out of the picture. The judge leaned back slowly in disbelief. Claire's attorney pinched the bridge of her nose like she was in physical pain. My parents sat behind the defense table in their own section, no longer in jail, but out on bond. They looked 10 years older. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dad stared at the floor, jaw clenched. But not once did either of them try to meet my eyes. When the prosecutor rested, the judge denied Claire's request for bail. "The defendant presents a severe risk to the safety of the victim," he declared, remanded into custody pending trial. Claire's composure shattered. "You don't understand," she screamed. "It was supposed to be easy. They said they'd be there. They said they'd help." Law enforcement moved in as she thrashed. Her voice echoed off the courtroom walls, wild and desperate. My parents sat frozen. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Dad looked like he might collapse. Plea deals and sentencing. The evidence was overwhelming. The DA didn't even entertain negotiations for weeks. Finally, facing the likelihood of a 15 to 20-year sentence, Claire took a plea deal. 6 years in prison for attempted murder, eligible for parole after 4 with good behavior. My parents accepted plea deals as well. Conspiracy charges reduced to misdemeanors. No jail time, but hefty fines, restitution, and 200 hours of community service each. They also had to submit formal written apologies to be read aloud in court. Their letters were cold, written by attorneys, sanitized. We acknowledge our role in enabling dangerous behavior. We accept responsibility. We deeply regret the distress caused. Not distress, injury, betrayal, attempted murder. But those words never appeared in their statements. I didn't attend the day Claire was transported to the women's correctional facility. Uncle Raymond did. He returned to my apartment afterward. She cried through the whole thing, he said she never meant for things to go that far. I exhaled slowly. She meant every single step. Yes, he agreed. She just regrets the camera. The move. 2 months later, once I was healed enough to lift boxes again, I stood in Uncle Raymond's condo, my condo, feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate timeline. The space was bright, airy, full of windows. 3 bedrooms, wooden floors, built-in shelving Uncle Raymond had installed himself years before. A fresh start, a life that was mine. Uncle Raymond hovered behind me, leaning on his cane instead of his walker now. "You're going to make this place beautiful," he said proudly. I swallowed the knot in my throat. "I wouldn't have it without you." "You earned it," he said firmly, "not because of what happened, but because of who you've always been." We spent the day unpacking, arranging furniture, ordering Italian takeout. For a few hours, the world felt almost normal. Then the doorbell rang. A delivery driver handed me a massive gift basket, gourmet coffee, chocolates, a small potted succulent, and a handwritten card. "Congratulations on your new home. You deserve better, Detective Patricia Wells." I stared at the card for a long time. Someone had believed me, when my own family didn't. What about my parents? They left voicemails, long ones, short ones, some pretending to apologize, others begging for forgiveness, some saying Claire's sentence was destroying them. I didn't listen. I deleted every message without pressing play. Uncle Raymond approved. "Forgiveness," he said, "is something that belongs to you. They don't get to demand it as if you owe them anything." He was right. For once I chose myself. When I finally lay down in my new bedroom, the condo quiet around me, the weight of everything settled in. Not crushing anymore, just real. Claire was gone. My parents were out of my life. And I was still here, still healing, still rising. Finally, safe. The first night in my new home was so quiet it felt unreal. No footsteps above me, no slammed doors, no Claire rehearsing excuses in the next room, no parents telling me to be patient with someone who had nearly ended my life. Just silence. Soft, peaceful, breathable. I lay in bed listening to it like someone listening to the ocean for the first time. My bruises had mostly faded. My ribs still ached in cold weather, and my wrist was wrapped in a brace. But my body felt lighter than it had in months. My heart, too, building a life that was mine. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. I set up my home office in the second bedroom. Ethan helped me mount my monitors on an adjustable arm so I wouldn't strain my wrist. He hovered over me anxiously at first, terrified to bump into me or brush against a sore spot. "You don't have to act like I'm made of glass," I teased one day, nudging him gently with my good shoulder. "Maybe not," he said softly, "but you're someone I don't ever want to see hurt again." Sometimes trauma bonds you to people. Other times, it shows you who was quietly protecting you all along. Ethan was the second kind. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time. Uncle Raymond came over every few days to help, even though his hips still stiffened if he stood too long. "Stop lifting heavy things," I scolded him when he tried to move my bookshelf. "I'll stop when you stop telling me what to do," he grumbled, then winced as he straightened up. After a pause, softer. "But seriously, don't worry. The hip is good. The doctor said I'm recovering ahead of schedule." His stubbornness was comforting, somehow. Predictable. Real. The voicemails I didn't play. Every few days, my phone would buzz with a new notification. New voicemail from Mom. New voicemail from Dad. I never opened them. I never listened. But I always read the transcriptions before deleting the messages entirely. Some were desperate. "Please, Leah, we need you back in the family." Some were self-centered. "Your sister's sentencing has destroyed us emotionally." Some were manipulative. We never meant for things to go this far. None contained the words, "We're sorry for what we did. We chose Claire over you. We put you in danger. We enabled her until she nearly killed you." Uncle Raymond was blunt about it. They want forgiveness because they're uncomfortable, not because they've changed. He was right. And for the first time in my life, I didn't bend, didn't give in, didn't try to fix it. I protected myself instead. A visit I didn't expect. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled across my dining table, someone knocked on the condo door. I checked the peephole. Detective Patricia Wells stood outside holding a clipboard and a soft smile. I opened the door quickly. "Detective, everything okay?" "Everything's fine," she reassured me. I was in the area and wanted to drop off some paperwork in person. Final documentation from the case. I thought it'd be easier than having it mailed. She stepped inside, her gaze taking in the bright windows, the neatly arranged shelves, the small plant Ethan bought for the windowsill. "It suits you," she said. "Feels like fresh air." "It feels safe," I admitted. "That's the most important part." She handed me a thick envelope. Copies of the sentencing documents, the final case file, the photo stills from security footage she thought I might want in case of future legal disputes. Before leaving, she paused at the doorway. "For what it's worth, Leah," she hesitated, words suddenly choosing themselves with care. "You handled all of this with more strength than most people I've worked with." It wasn't praise, it was recognition. And I felt it land deeper than I expected. Healing isn't a straight line. Some mornings I woke up reaching for my phone before remembering. I don't have to talk to them anymore. Some nights I dreamed about the stairwell, the fall, the feeling of betrayal slicing deeper than the pain. But healing came in small moments. Making morning coffee in my own kitchen, laughing with Ethan while assembling flat-pack furniture, watching Uncle Raymond sink into my new couch with a satisfied sigh, seeing sunlight through the windows without dread clinging to the edges of it. The condo became something more than a place to live. It became proof. Proof that love doesn't have to be earned through humiliation. Proof that family can be chosen by actions, not DNA. Proof that survival can lead to a softer, brighter life. The conversation with Uncle Raymond. A month after I moved in, we sat on my balcony with iced tea. He was walking almost normally by then, only a slight stiffness in his right leg. He looked out over the street, then at me. "You've done good, kid," he said quietly. "You've built something here, something peaceful." "Thanks to you." "No," he corrected. "Thanks to you choosing peace instead of chaos. I gave you keys. You're the one who opened the door." I swallowed hard. "Do you ever think I might forgive them someday?" I asked. He considered this carefully. "Forgiveness," he said slowly, "isn't something you give for them. It's something you give yourself when you're no longer holding the wound." He tapped his chest lightly. "And you're still healing. That's enough for now." The final image. After he left, I stood in the living room, with boxes finally unpacked, walls finally decorated, the sunlight slipping across polished floors. For the first time in my life, the space around me didn't hold expectations, or pressure, or danger. Just calm, just future. I moved to the window and looked out, breathing in the quiet. My family had tried to break me, but I had survived. And now, I was finally living a life not shaped by their shadows. Just mine. Just peace.